everybody, and welcome to Dangerous Ideas. I apologize for the shitty lighting tonight. It's a rare moment of poor production on my part. Hope you guys are doing well out there. Very important show today. Please click thumbs up, say something in the chat, all that good stuff. And I'm just going to dive right in. The journalist I have on today is one of my favorites. I've interviewed him many times before and always doing amazing work. But unfortunately, I'm talking to him today because he was arrested by the British authorities basically for being a reporter. And in certain aspects, it is perhaps the first of this type of arrest. Anyway, we'll be getting into all of it. Please welcome everybody, Richard Medhurst.
Hi, Lee. Thanks for the grand introduction. It's a pleasure and an honor to be with you as usual.
Yeah, it's good to talk with you. But obviously, these are horrifying times, and what happened to you is horrifying, and it seems to all be ratcheting up. But before I get ahead of myself, if you can just describe to everyone what happened to you.
Well, I was arrested at the airport. So just to be clear, I was not detained for questioning. Like where basically the difference is where they will keep you for a few hours and then let you go.
Yeah, I had seen 5 hours. It had been the kind of standard. I mean, it's still horrible, but the standard thing they did with Kit Clarenberg at the gray zone. I think Craig Murray, a few others.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, so that's called a Schedule 7, and that's what I thought was happening with me. I thought I'm being Schedule 7. So what happened is they actually arrested me. They did not detain me. They actually arrested me. And they had like 6 people waiting at the entrance of the aircraft. So basically they landed. I could tell something bad was going to happen when the plane was trying to taxi. And I filled up like more passports than I can count since I was a baby. So I've flown a lot of times. And yeah, it's normal for planes to like pause in the taxiing, but something was off. Like I don't know, something was off, and there's something the pilot said. And then they called me to the front of the plane. So I walked up. And I knew it was going to happen, and I held my head high, and because I got, I've done nothing wrong, and I asked them, "Who are you, and what do you want?" And they wouldn't answer, and I could tell they're police. Obviously, one of them was wearing like in uniform, like tactical gear and stuff. So all the others were in suits. It was 5 men and 1 woman. Yeah. So they asked me they did not let me take my bags. They just asked me, "Where are your bags?" And I pointed, and then they would ask me, like, "Do you have anything else in the hold?" And they would ask me 2 times. I say, "No, I do not have anything else in the hold." So, like as if I'm just lying by default when they just met me.
Right.
So yeah, they took my bags, and we started walking up the jetway, and then or the bridge, whatever you want to call it. And keep in mind that no one was allowed to leave the plane before they had basically removed me off it, right? So one of them told me, like, because I was asking where my bags went, and he basically said, like, we can arrest you in front of everyone, or we can do it privately in there. And I was just thinking, so what kind of threat is that? You just showed everybody that you're going to arrest me, so you've already kind of like humiliated me, if you will. Anyway, they accused me of stalling, so I was just to show them that I'm cooperating. I literally kept walking. I was just asking, where are my bags? Because I don't know who the hell you are and what you're doing with them. So anyway, we went to this room, like this adjacent room, and they told me, okay, Section 12, so not Schedule 7, but Section 12. And they said that it's for allegedly recklessly expressing support for a prescribed organization. Now, keep in mind, when you're in the moment, like and not just in the moment, but for hours and hours, I didn't know what the hell they're talking about. I legitimately did not know what they're talking about. So I was simply trying to ask them, what does that mean? What, can you explain what organizations you're talking about and what you mean by support? Anyway. So they arrested me, they searched me. So we're still in this room, right? And they handcuffed me with these special handcuffs. It's like, they don't look like 2 rings with a chain between them. It's like a picture of phone, it's like a giant block of metal, and then you have 2 rings attached to it. And it's made in a way that they handcuff you in a way that your hands don't like rest normally like this, but they're rather on top of each other. So it's and double lock with 2 keys or one key, whatever. I don't know, but locked twice. Like, as if I'm Hannibal Lecter. They treated me like a serial killer. It's crazy. It's really crazy. And then they took me down to this, and of course they're recording me the whole time. They have these body cams, they're recording me. So they took me down to this to runway, and I told them, I asked them, can I at least inform my family what's going on, because I think that's actually a right that you have, and they said no. So they put me in a police van, and this police van is not made for, it's made for like one person basically. So it's like a cage on wheels. Like, I'm not joking. It's like made for one person. It's a cage on wheels, and it's being recorded the whole time, of course, with audio and video. Everything is in England, and we drove for about 15 minutes, 10 minutes, I don't know, and it's rocking back and forth, and then we get to the station and they search me again. Like, I don't know why, but what do they think happened? Someone smuggled something, and you're the ones that took me here. Anyway, they searched me again. And this time I had to take off my shoes as well. So, there was this element of like, we want to extra humiliate you, take off your shoes. All right, put the shoes over there. Now take off your socks one by one. Show us the sock. Now turn the sock inside out and show us again. And then show us your feet, that you're not hiding anything in there. And then I'd have to ask them, like, can I put the sock back on, right? Because I'm trying to show them I'm being cooperative. So then I put shoes and socks back on. Then they searched me, patted me down again, and then they took me to another room. And while they're booking me, they were basically kind of going through my stuff in just like whatever in the lobby, like it's nothing. And they had so they took my phones, they took my microphones, even
And can I ask, I mean, the United States doesn't actually abide by the things that they tell us they're supposed to, but one of the things is supposedly they're supposed to advise you of your Miranda rights, to tell you whether they have a warrant for your arrest, those kind of things. Is there any of that shit in Britain?
So I'm glad you asked, Lee. I'm glad you asked, because they did tell me when they arrested me that what I say can be used against me. Now, here's the funny thing, and again, I don't want to say. So I'll try and spell this out very, very clearly. Once I got to the station, and as I said, I was just kind of waiting around. They were looking through my stuff, and there was someone at the desk like booking me. I saw a poster on the wall that said, "You need a solicitor," and I was thinking to myself, hold on, can I even have a solicitor? Because keep in mind, at this point, I thought I'm being Schedule 7'd, so you're not allowed to have a lawyer. And I thought, why not just ask? Just try it. And then I asked one of the arresting officers, the woman, I asked her, can I have a solicitor? I expected her to say no. And then she said, well, yeah, if you want, you can have one. Like she spoke about it like it was, like some option on a dinner menu or something, And I was, and just, in the following days, like yesterday, I was thinking to myself, did any of them tell me at any point that I can have a lawyer before I brought it up? And I can't think of an instance. Now, again, this might just be a lapse in memory. I might be wrong. So I don't want to say definitively, but at the moment, I cannot remember them mentioning that I have the right to have a lawyer until I brought it up, which I find a bit weird. Yeah. But anyway, that's really the least of it.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So they.
So you said you'd like one, and then what? Did they get one?
Yeah. So I told the officer that was booking me that I'd like a lawyer, and I gave them a list of names to contact, and I once again asked, like, can I speak to my family? And it was very confusing, because they said I'm not, my calls are withheld. So that was their way of saying no. And then apparently for a lawyer, I was also not allowed to call myself. I think the police have to do it for you, but maybe that's standard procedure. I don't know. I'm not trying to say that this was done like on purpose just to me. I'm just trying to show that how absurd it is that if you're arrested under these terrorism laws, that you're basically gagged, and it's twice as worse if you're a journalist, right? But yeah, so the entire period that I was in custody, like the whole 24 hours, or it was almost 24 hours, not exactly, but almost. I never spoke to a family member. I never spoke to a friend. The only communication was with lawyers, and it was, I was hoping that they would call, because you have to keep in mind that I asked to go to the toilet. I asked for water. I had to beg like a nag and ask multiple guards, like, otherwise I felt like it wasn't going to happen, and I waited like hours and hours just to get one small cup of water. I think in the whole time I was there, I had like 4 cups of water, maybe maximum, and that's one of them was from the nurse. So it's like barely a liter, you could say,
Right.
give or take. And the conditions, I mean, the cell, no one should be in that cell. Like, let me just say, no one, even a convicted serial killer should not be in that cell. Okay. I'm not trying to make it out to be like it's a concentration camp. No, it's not. But it was really just, you're being watched while you pee. You're being recorded with audio and video as you're going to the toilet, as you sleep. You're in solitary confinement. It's cold. You're sleeping on a concrete ledge. That is the supposed bed. And then they have like something, these like mats that you use in gymnastics, like in, these blue mats that they have to land on when they're doing. Yeah, it looked like that, but it wasn't that thick. I wish it were. It was actually much, much, much thinner. So that's what you sleep on, and you have a thin blanket, and it's it's just messed up, and there's barely any light, and it smells like urine. The whole cell smells like urine, and there's nothing in there. It's just a toilet and this so-called bed, and then you wash your hands by putting them inside the wall. It's just, I can't believe anyone is held in these conditions. And never mind the fact that they were treating me like I am a violent criminal terrorist, when I'm actually the exact opposite. I mean, this is what I find ironic, what they're doing to me, what they did to Craig Murray and to Scott Ritter. It's like we all have some connection. We're all like molded by the diplomatic community, and we abide by international law and by peaceful things, and they make us out to be the complete polar opposite. And I think there's an element to that of class treachery. Like, they think that we should be working for them. We're not on their team, and we're using all our languages and our skills and our mental faculties to just tell the truth. Really, it's not like we want to work against our countries. On the contrary, actually, we want to make our countries better. But they view us as class traitors. I really think there's an element to that. So I mean, it goes without saying that no one should be in those conditions. And the fact that they went through the whole process of taking me off the plane, cuffing me, arresting me, driving me down there, booking me, taking my DNA. They put a swab in my mouth, they took my DNA. They took me to a machine. They fingerprinted every single finger, then the whole hand, then the palms. Like, unbelievable. Who said that I want to give you my damn fingerprints? I've done nothing wrong. You yourselves have not even charged me. So like, what is the point of this?
When they released you after 24 hours, was there anything? Was there an interrogation at any point, or was it literally just holding you in a cell?
No, they questioned me. Yeah, they questioned me. It's just I'm not allowed to go into too much detail because I'm still under investigation. Like, I could still be charged. So I'm out on pre-charge bail, basically. And the thing with the Terrorism Act is that they could extend your time in prison, in jail, to, I mean, like, for several days or weeks. That's a scary bit. And right now, so just to kind of give you an idea, they questioned me like the next day, right? They arrested me, I think maybe 6 p.m., something like that, and then I wasn't questioned till the afternoon the next day. So what was the point of all this, right? They could have just sent a letter and invited me down to the station, and I would have come. Right. Yeah. So the questioning lasted about between an hour to 2 hours, something like that. And it was 2 detectives. And basically, I can't go into too much detail, but it's about my journalism. Okay, let's just put it that way. It's about my journalism. I think you can guess which issues.
I can say, since this is not you saying it, that Times of Israel, which of course is a Israeli propaganda rag, but they wrote an article about it and said the law that you were detained under stipulates that expressing beliefs or carrying out actions that support a prescribed organization is a criminal offense. And basically, one can surmise that this means that because you're not giving in to Israel's propaganda, you are therefore supporting Hamas, which is a terrorist organization under their ideas in Britain and the United States, under their ridiculous, laws. And so therefore you are like equivalent to a terrorist. It's that, I mean, you don't have to say anything. I'm
I
just
don't,
surmising
yeah.
from what they said, which is fucking insane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's the opposite of allowing reporting of any kind. Like,
It is. Yeah, we are there, and we've reached that level of insanity. And it's the threshold is so low. It's like, I mean, they can really, I'm not joking, they can really take any kind of statement and make it sound like it's it's, if I could draw an analogy, it's like when you say I'm against the killing of Palestinian babies, and then they say you're an anti-Semite. It's this kind of mental gymnastics. That's what's going on here.
right.
So I find this atrocious. I mean, for many reasons. I find it atrocious that that I'm treated like this in my own country. I find it atrocious that I'm basically being muzzled as a journalist, and I find it atrocious that this is just allowed to go on. Don't get me wrong. There are parts of the Terrorism Act that are actually about fighting, like real terrorism, but a lot of things in it have nothing to do with counterterrorism. They're about political persecution. So that's what this is. I'm basically the first journalist in Britain to be arrested at the airport under Section 12, and they're trying to make an example out of me. They're hoping that if they can normalize this, that they can do it to others. And so I have I'm under investigation for 3 months, and I could be charged. And yeah,
Is Section 12 new in Britain?
no, it's I think so I was told, again, I didn't know of it, but I found out now that it was introduced in 2019.
2019.
Yeah, something like that.
And do you feel it's I realize these are different countries, obviously, but do you feel like, is it a coincidence that this happens within, I don't know, 10 days of Scott Ritter being raided by the FBI for so-called FARA violations, but they're also not telling him much? We lost your video, Richard, if you can still hear me.
I'm still here.
Okay, I'll keep talking. Hopefully the video will come back. But yeah, they arrested him, didn't tell him much of anything. They raided his house, stole all his devices, and they didn't imprison him. But the fact that this happens within 10 days of each other, you guys are two of the probably largest, at least Western independent media voices who are so actively and boldly speaking out against Israel's genocide, the ongoing genocide, and of course the proxy war in Ukraine. And so it would just be kind of a crazy coincidence for this to be within 10 days of each other.
I honestly, I've been asking myself the same thing. I think we've reached a point in the West where they can do, and they think they can do whatever they want. So it could be connected. It really could be. At the same time, though, I feel like I feel like maybe they might have had their eye on me for a while. I don't know. I really don't know. It's difficult to say. There are some things I would like to say, but again, I'm not at liberty, so I can't answer the question fully right now. But I wouldn't be surprised if it is connected, and I also wouldn't be surprised if they've had their eye on me for a while. But both possibilities are equally likely. And I think what's funny is that when you're arresting, I mean, look, if you go and arrest someone for terrorism, obviously you have some kind of idea who you're arresting, right? Because you got to gauge, like, how many officers do you need to bring? Is this person violent? What are the there's a million things to take into consideration. And my point here is just that they obviously know I'm not a risk to anyone. They obviously know I'm not a terrorist. They obviously know that I work as a journalist. I believe in the pen, right? That's my tool. And they obviously know that, about my family. My parents both have Nobel Peace Prizes. They worked in the UN. My father was in the Metropolitan Police before going to the UN when he was very young. And then, he's a counterterrorism expert. He is a counterterrorism expert. So I know a lot of things from him. And I myself, I'm a victim of terrorism. When we were posted in a lot of places because of my parents' work, and I attended the British school in Pakistan, in Islamabad, and Bin Laden's lieutenant Zawahiri, he planted well, he bombed the Egyptian embassy. It was a double suicide bombing, and I was there when it happened, and right next to the embassy because my school was there. And like, what are you comparing me with, basically? Like, this, if this is the bar that you've lowered it so much, I mean, I feel insulted, to be honest. I really do. And especially the irony here is that if you look at all these Al-Qaeda figures and ISIS figures, who's behind them? It's Britain and the United States. So, who's the real terrorist here, honestly? Like, the nerve of these people, So my point here is just that if they have had their eye on, going back to your question, if they have had their eye on me for a while, well, they obviously know who I am. And even if they didn't, and this was just kind of like spontaneous thing, again, you still have to have some idea who you're dealing with. And it's very clear that I'm not a terrorist, and I have no connection to terrorism, and neither does my family, and I don't fit the stereotypical profile. With that said, the law is so absurd now that anyone is a terrorist according to them, and I completely reject that, and I think we should oppose that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just crushing to journalism of any kind. You might not be able to answer this, but I'll ask it anyway. The New, and feel free not to answer, the New York Times, you might have seen the article. They were reported the other day about Scott Ritter and Dimitri Simes being raided on the same day almost, or a day apart or something. Both of them have some connection to Russian media outlets, but Scott Ritter, his connection is that he is at least a connection since 2022, which was when RT America closed up shop and everything. His connection has been writing a few articles for RT's online website, getting paid a total of $150 to $300 a post. So he's probably made, $2,000 or something from it. And that's the entirety of his connection monetarily with RT or Russia. And the New York Times is reporting that this is basically might be connected to that. Simes has some show on Russian media. So I don't know if you can answer whether you think this has anything to do with your arrest.
Something with Russian media? No, I mean,
or any media that I also, I'm friendly, you maybe as well, with George Galloway, and he said, when I saw him a year and a half ago or something, he said that he could no longer, being in Britain, he could no longer appear on RT television, even unpaid, or CGTN or anything, because of he could get arrested under terrorism just for appearing on those networks.
I mean, again, I can't answer it directly, but I haven't. I mean, I basically started independently with my YouTube, and like, I'm talking about my career in general. I started like 4 years ago independently, and I did like a couple of things on the side, and now I'm back to independent. I couldn't. It was too much of a workload. Basically, I bit off more than I could chew, and especially with all the stuff we're covering. But no, so it was what I'm quote unquote guilty of is I've tried to be a counterweight to mainstream media, especially as an independent journalist. That's the whole point. It's like I don't want to have anyone editorially controlling what I'm doing, and because you'll always end up going in a different direction perhaps than you want to. So the Palestinian issue, this has been going on for 76 years, even more actually, and the way it's been reported on and talked about in the West it's not factual. It's not like I want to be a contrarian, I want to be against whatever is the mainstream. It's nothing to do with that. It's an injustice and it has to be corrected, and I just want to report the truth. I'm just trying to be a counterweight. I'm just trying to be a counterbalance. I'm just trying to do my actual job as a journalist. And I think I'm being targeted because of that. And I think they want right now, especially because they feel emboldened with the genocide, no one's stopping them, and then just continuing. They feel emboldened, and they want to like crush people who are, giving them a trouble, quote unquote. Doing your job as a journalist, essentially. So that's what it's really about, in my opinion, from what I can deduce. And
And I assume that you kind of have no choice but for this to impact your reporting and your journalism right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like anything that I say, they could use it against me. So as a human being, as a private person, I can't I feel like I'm muzzled, and especially as a journalist. I mean, this is my livelihood. They are directly attacking my ability to work directly. They even stole my equipment. They took my phones. They took my wired microphones, my wireless microphones, my headphones. I mean, what the hell is wrong with them? I mean, I even told them, like, do you really have to take my microphones? And then they said, oh yeah, that shouldn't be in here, but it's sealed already. That was the reason he gave me.
It's sealed already.
Yeah, I swear to God. And it's funny because when they were booking me, so this happened when I asked them about the mics when I was leaving, right? Because I wanted my stuff. But when they were booking me, I literally overheard them in front of me. They were right in front of me, just saying like, "Oh yeah, we've already sealed this, but actually let's put it in a bigger bag." So they're very capable of unsealing the evidence,
right?
And replacing it when it suits them. Just this costs money, man. This costs money, and I don't know if those devices I'll ever get them back. I'm assuming maybe, but who wants them? I mean, after they've gone through their hands. But really, though, it's impacting my ability to work. It's disrupting everything, and that's what they want ultimately. It's funny because they released me. Now, keep in mind, they released me unconditionally, right? So I'm out on unconditional bail, which apparently is very rare in these kinds of cases. And I think it goes to show you how I'm clearly not a terrorist.
Right.
But I think you could interpret it also in another way, that they did that on purpose. So they didn't say like you can't post or something like that, but they did it maybe on purpose, knowing that the investigation hanging over my head is going to achieve the effect of them having written it out clearly, where you can't post and you can't, they don't even have to do it. They can do it implicitly. It's such a British thing to do. That's the British way. It's like stab you in the front, not in the back, with smiles. Right. And remember, all the officers and the detectives very friendly. Everyone's very friendly. But yeah, can I have a glass of water? Yeah, sure. And then they disappear. So yeah,
well, not only are the grunts sometimes friendly, or often friendly, but listening to Scott's depiction of things, because he comes from the Marines and everything, he is just so overwhelmingly kind in his analysis of the people of the FBI that raided his house and stole all his things. He's like, look, they're just doing their job, but I think that they're bosses. And I'm like, in my opinion, fuck that. No, they're the worst human beings. They're stealing a reporter's computers because he said things that the U.S. doesn't like. And so it's interesting. But
no, it's funny. I understand both, but I'm leaning more towards what you're saying. And my father, I think he joined the Met when he was a teenager for a few years, right? So like I know all the tricks. I even told them, I know your tricks, like the intimidation and all this. So just get on with it.
Are your parents still around? Are they seeing this?
Oh yeah, they're seeing this. Yeah, I mean, they think it's outrageous. They think it's outrageous. And again, like I said, it's I find it so. It's like offensive. It's like I'm from the diplomatic community. Diplomacy entails the exact opposite of terrorism. Like, can you just maybe put two and two together? But that shows you they know these things. They know these things. It just shows you it's political. They're targeting me because I'm a journalist. That is the crime. Alleged crime. So with my stuff, they took my equipment. And not to mention, it's a violation of privacy, and so I mean, it's not just they're impeding my work; it's an affront on my privacy. I walked out of a police station after almost 24 hours with no ability to call my family. I mean, what is that?
It reminds me of when they arrested Jill Stein for trying to attend the presidential debate when she was running for president, and they locked her in a room for 8 hours during the debate, and then took her phone and everything else, and then released her into the night in the middle of Long Island with no way to call anyone or get home or anything. That's what happens if you try and be a part of our democracy in the U.S. But several people in the chat have asked how they can help you. I don't know if you're at a point right now where there's something to be done, but if so,
well, it's very kind of you, Lee, and of everyone. I mean, the number one way you can help is to please keep talking about this and applying pressure, because it is a political case, and basically having public pressure might influence the decision not to charge me. So I really need all the support and all the public support that I can get, and I have been getting a lot, and I'm really humbled. The fact you invited me on is also part of that, and I'm grateful that you gave me a chance to come and speak about it. So just talking about it is everything. If people want to support also financially, I mean, there's like Patreon and stuff, but I mean, I'm just used to saying that at the end of shows because we usually ask it as a courtesy. But really, when it comes to this case, it's all about taking a stand, because I don't think I might be the first one to be arrested under Section 12, but I don't think I'm going to be the last. I think they will see that they're trying to test the waters and see like what kind of response they get, and then if they can go ahead. It's outrageous. It's really outrageous. It's honestly a scandal, and I don't need to point out the irony of I don't think it's lost on anyone that the real terrorists are the ones that are bombing Gaza, that are going off and who created Al Qaeda, and we know exactly who they are, where they are, but they get off scot-free, and instead they use this legislation liberally against journalists. I mean, if this had happened to me in let's say Russia or China or something, it would be front page news, right? It's scandalous, really, honestly. I mean, this is our freedom of the press in England, basically.
They're arresting you for speaking the truth about Israel, it seems, or we suspect, some of us. And meanwhile, the UK is shipping bombs to Israel to bomb children.
Yeah. And I just want to say, when I covered Assange's case, every minute of that, I saw how rigged the system is. It was really sad. It wasn't like a moment of disillusionment. I already knew what was going on, that it's rigged. But just being there still, it does have it does leave an impression on you. And you're sitting 2 meters away from the lawyers and just watching like this institution, the state, just crushing someone. I thought really that I'd seen everything with that. And now it's like, okay, we're going to take the terrorism legislation, even some old stuff from a few years back, and now really start, gunning for people. So, it's sad.
Yeah. Incredibly sad to see this rise of fascism. Just go ahead and let people know what your channels are, your pages are, assuming they still exist.
Yeah, you can find me on youtube.com/Richard Medhurst. And if you type on Twitter Richard Medhurst, you'll also find me there. And patreon.com/Richard Medhurst. And again, I'm grateful to all of the outpouring of support and for having me on, Lee. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. And, if there are any updates where you need to let people know, feel free to come back on.
Thank you so much. It's really, I would take it to heart. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Keep fighting.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
All right. Such an important interview. And, as I've said when I was covering this and covering Scott Ritter before, it is definitely scary to see my people I view as my peers, people I've worked with at RT, when I was at RT and up to 2 years ago, being arrested, being swatted, FBI raids, their stuff stolen for being reporters. I mean, obviously Assange was horrific, and I tried to fight for his freedom until the day he was freed. And now it seems some of this seems similar. Obviously his was amped up because of the amount of impact he was having and the amount of transparency he was bringing to our governments. But this what we've seen in the past few weeks. Also, people mentioned that the Cradle, which is a great news source, has had all their platforms deleted from Facebook, Instagram, etc. That just happened in the past few days. So much of this is happening in the past 2 weeks, and it is really horrifying on so many levels. Now, many of you know that I call myself the most censored comedian in America because I haven't had anyone make a solid argument for anyone else being more censored. And so I'm not saying that comedians, that is. So I'm not saying that this started in the past few weeks, but there's obviously a difference between losing your YouTube page and having your house swatted by the FBI. Raided by the FBI and being imprisoned for 24 hours and all your devices stolen. So really, crazy shit going on right now. And, obviously it's in the lead up to the election. It has to do with Israel's ongoing genocide. But yeah, just scary shit. And I think you guys need to fight for Richard Medhurst and for the charges to be dropped there. But if something like this happens to me, I hope you'll fight for me as well. And all of these voices, even if maybe you hadn't heard of them, maybe you've never watched Richard Medhurst, but you should be fighting for independent journalists who are being arrested for being independent journalists, who are having all their devices stolen and their stuff suppressed. And it is going to take a lot of us. I mean, a lot of us, it's the millions around the world that fought for Julian Assange that honestly ultimately got him freed. If it had not stayed in people's minds and their consciousness, then the UK and the US would have locked him away in a dungeon and never spoken about it again. It was all of us fighting to keep that story going, to keep people aware of Assange's continued torture. That is the reason he's free right now. So, thank you all for being here as well and joining this. As I've mentioned, this month, these few weeks is a little weird with my schedule. I'm traveling to see family, etc. But I do want to keep bringing you shows. So I hope you've enjoyed this one. But right now, I am also going to play my interview with Lisa Pease. Now, I already posted that as a separate video, but I imagine many of you have not seen it. She is the preeminent scholar on the assassination of RFK. And I talked to her for a half an hour about some of the most fascinating aspects of how we know RFK's assassination was at minimum more than just Sirhan, who is the only person in prison for killing RFK. And there's a lot of fascination, I'd say, amped up this year about RFK's assassination, both because his son, RFK Jr., is running for president or maybe stepping down as I speak. But either way, and the fact that there was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump, I think, has brought all this back to light. So, I think it was a very fascinating, very important interview. And for some of you may have seen it. If you've seen it, you are welcome to turn it off. Okay. I will not force you to watch it again. But I imagine a lot of you have not seen it. So it just came out a week ago. So I hope you enjoy that now. And I will be back. I should have a live stream Monday for you. And if you feel like you've gotten 38 cents out of this episode, then I hope you will join up at leecamp.net and become a member there. 38 cents an episode, which is $6 a month. And you get all kinds of free stuff. Once you join up, you get both my books, both my ebooks now, Dangerous Ideas and Bullet Points and Punchlines. Plus you get my comedy special, my Zoom comedy special, Laughing All the Way to the Shitstorm. And you get special segments all the time. So you get a lot of stuff for $6. Well worth it. So I hope you will join up at leecamp.net, which forwards you to my locals page, then scroll down to become a subscriber. Okay, without further ado, here is my interview with Lisa Pease, who wrote the book on the assassination of RFK and how we should not blame Sirhan, but instead a certain three-letter agency may have been somewhat responsible. Anyway. Hope you enjoy. As you probably know, especially with the assassination attempt on Donald Trump and with RFK Jr. running for president, there's been a lot of renewed interest this year in what happened to RFK, to Robert Kennedy, his assassination back in 1968. And I'm going to speak right now with, I'd say the top scholar on this issue in our country, and she's written an incredible book, which I've had her on. I had her on Redacted tonight, back in the day, to talk about this and other topics as well. But I think it's a great topic to revisit, and the book is called A Lie Too Big to Fail. And please welcome Lisa Pease. Hey.
Hi, Lee. Thank you for that introduction. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's good to see, obviously not for the best reasons, an assassination attempt, etc. But it is good to see people asking new questions, those who are coming to this issue for the first time. I mean, there's a lot of people in this country who, I mean, even I was born after the assassination of Robert Kennedy, but I mean, people who were born so long after it that it's barely even in the talking points of the public's memory. So it's good to see people kind of waking up to it. And I wanted to have you on for this reason and discuss this. But you had a good idea, which I appreciated, which was not to try and within half an hour go through the entirety of all the evidence about RFK's assassination and Sirhan, but to focus on kind of one pivotal element, which or one key area. And I think that was a great idea, so that we can have enough time to talk about it rather than jumping from thing to thing endlessly. And that area is the one that I had always been hung up on. I mean, I had not studied the topic that much, but I had kind of for a while rolled my eyes at the idea of, mind control or hypnotism being part of this plot and what went down. And I no longer roll my eyes at that. It seems very feasible to me. And so we're going to focus this half hour on that. But in order to do that, we should probably spend 1 minute just laying the basic facts of the RFK's assassination.
Sure. For people who don't know the story,
Yeah.
Robert Kennedy was running for president for the Democratic nomination. He had just lost the Oregon primaries, the first primary Kennedy had ever lost.
Yeah.
And so he came into California with a lot at stake. He needed a big win to propel him to the Democratic convention, which would follow shortly after. At that point, California was one of the last states. He did win the California primary. He went down, he was staying at the Ambassador Hotel, went to the ballroom there, the embassy ballroom, gave a nice speech about the importance of coming together. Everything he said there could be said in any presidential campaign. It's still true. After the speech, he had two options, and his team had set up two paths for him. One would have been to go downstairs to talk to the public victory party, because the upstairs was the private party, or he could go talk to the print media, as he always did at his campaign stops. He knew the television guys got all the juice, so to speak, from the other candidates, but he had once been a reporter, so he had sympathy for the print media. So as he went out the backstage door, he turned right, went down a little ramp, walked through these double doors into the pantry, and there were, by LAPD count, there were 77 people there. And I would say plus or minus a few, because I think there were a few more that were in there that weren't accounted for. But he stopped, shook hands with people. Sirhan pulls a gun from in front of Kennedy, fires directly at him. Kennedy throws up his hands and falls backwards. And turns out he was actually shot from behind at a distance of not more than an inch, even though Sirhan was about 3 feet in front of him. And
we can
Sirhan's
see
first
that
shot was open.
They could see the powder burns on the back of the head. Yeah.
Right. They could test it. Is that my right ear? Yeah, that's my right ear. Okay. Just want to be accurate. So obviously the people in the pantry, they saw Sirhan pull out a gun and fire, and no one knew what the autopsy report was going to reveal at that point. So everybody thought that was in the pantry that saw anything assumed Sirhan had killed Robert Kennedy. And of course, that's what the media breathlessly reported, and the police and everybody, closed ranks to say that was it, and that he was the only shooter and the only suspect, which we now know was completely not true. They actually apprehended 2 other people at the hotel that night, one of whom people thought had run from the pantry with a gun. So that's pretty interesting. And there were 6 different police suspects, only one of which was Sirhan on police radio. But the Inspector Powers got on the police radio and said, "Hey, look, we got Rayford Johnson. He said it was only one guy. We've got that one guy. Let's not get anybody started on a big conspiracy."
Yeah, and police want to, with something that the entire nation's going to be paying attention to, they want to say we got our man immediately. They don't want it to be murky and muddy and makes them look dumb. And so yelling "we got our man" the night of is great for them.
Right. And it set the tone, because after that, anytime a policeman found evidence of conspiracy, it's easy to second guess and said, but Inspector Powers said we got our man, so I'm going to just let that go.
Right.
And so that's the official story. Now,
Yeah, and one
yeah,
last thing to just throw in here, besides all the eyewitness testimony and everything, is that uh, the bullets that are in evidence, there's a lot very clear are not the bullets that were fired, and in fact, there's what 14 bullets that were fired, and his
at
gun
least
didn't.
13 for sure,
Yeah.
but in my book, I actually get up to about 16 or 17, based on the witness testimony. It's pretty shocking. There were a
And
lot of
and so
bullets.
even if you wanted to believe his gun was firing real bullets, that his gun doesn't hold that many bullets, so
No,
it doesn't add
his
up.
gun held 8 bullets, and there's literally photographic evidence, of up to 12 bullets right there, 13 bullets actually, photographic evidence. There's also audio evidence of 13 bullets. I'm less a fan of the audio evidence. I think that's more subject to analysis, but the photos are very clear. There were at least 5 other bullets in the pantry. 4 were in the pantry doors where Kennedy had walked through, that set of double doors, and then 1 was at the stage door as Kennedy exited. Somebody might have tried to make a shot there. So anyway, it's an astonishing number of bullets. It's impossible for it to come from Sirhan's gun. He didn't have time to reload. Sirhan was captured literally on the second shot. There was a huge burly man, the maitre d', Carl Euchre, who was right there as Sirhan started to fire, and he put him in a headlock and moved his gun away from the crowd. And that's interesting too, because not only was Kennedy hit 4 times, but 5 other people were shot at least once each, and some of them were shot more than once. Like a bullet went through somebody's lower pant leg, and so the police just said, well, that bullet then ended up in somebody else's body. They made all the bullets
Right,
do double
more magic.
duty.
They'd had such luck with the JFK magic bullet that they had more magic bullets. Yeah.
Exactly, and shockingly, no one questioned that. Or very few people did for years.
So then, if you're investigating this and you're saying what happened, and you immediately go, well, Sirhan did something that evening. I mean, everyone knows he pulled a gun. So then it becomes, well, what part of if it was a larger plan, what part of this plan was he? And he's still in prison. He's the only person who's ever been locked up for this. And
Mhm.
what part of the plan was he? And how was he behaving? That night and in the days after.
Right. And what level of guilt should we assign? Because Sirhan has always claimed credibly, even to the prosecutors, even to the police in the hours immediately after the assassination, he's claimed he doesn't remember the shooting in the pantry. And there's about 5 possible reasons for that. 1, he's lying. Okay.
Right.
That's the obvious thing that people think. But if he's lying, he's been in jail his entire life. Why lie at this point? Plus, his attorney said, if you say that, no one's going to believe you. You'll never get paroled. Why would you maintain that lie? It'd be easier to say, well, I did shoot and I remember, and now I can be released on parole. Because other people,
Right.
Dan White killed 2 politicians in San Francisco, and he was paroled 5 years later. I mean, it's like, how is that not what happened, to Sirhan? Anyway, 5 years I think might have been a little too soon for
A little light,
anybody.
yeah.
And Dan White ended up committing suicide. Maybe people knew that's what he would
Well,
do.
he was the one who was he was the one who was high on Twinkies, right?
Yeah, supposedly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So.
The Twinkie defense. Yes. Anyway, so either if he's lying, he fooled everybody, because the prosecution didn't think he was lying, his defense attorneys didn't think he was lying, and the police who interviewed him didn't think he was lying. And they said that. They said he really seems not to remember, and he's very honest on the things he does remember. So when he says he doesn't remember, we believe him.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you move beyond, I don't remember, what are the other reasons he could
Right.
have?
So other reasons, brain damage. Well, he was examined by a physician. There was no physical brain damage. Another could be drugs or alcohol, and drugs it's harder to test for, so I'm not going to rule that out entirely. But with alcohol, we've all seen a drug person in our life. I think everyone above a certain age knows what that looks like and what it smells like, right? And the bleary eyes and the red, cheeks and the alcoholic breath. Not one person ever described Sirhan as drunk. And yet his attorneys did try to plead that and said, well, he had 4 Tom Collinses, that's why he can't remember. Well, that's a convenient excuse, but that doesn't cover it either. So then it's like, was there some psychological reason he couldn't remember? No one could find any evidence of like a psychological trigger in that sense. And so the fifth thing is really hypnosis, because a loss of memory, amnesia, is super common after people have been hypnotized. And one of the strong clues of hypnosis is the fact that his pupils were dilated. And they even, revealed that in the court and got the guy to say that. And it's one of the signs you can't fake. You can't pretend to
Right.
be hypnotized. You can't make your eyes dilate by themselves.
And another thing that's striking in your book is you must go through about 5 different eyewitnesses, many of them who said, he's the guy, he did it, these are cops, etc. But they all mention how calm he was, how kind of out of it in another realm he was. One of
Right.
them said he
Enormously
seemed,
peaceful.
yeah,
Yes.
one of them said he seemed no more nervous than someone getting a parking ticket.
Right.
So there seems to be a coalescing of eyewitnesses saying this guy was in some sort of trance state. Now, you could argue
Right.
drugs, but that goes against some of the other evidence. But there's very few
Right.
things that would put someone in that
In a
type of,
trance state.
that type of behavior. Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously, the more you get into the story, the more it fits all the evidence, because he was firing blanks. Why would you have a conspirator in a plot to kill Kennedy firing blanks? Well, if he's in a hypnotic state, you really don't want him firing bullets, because people under hypnosis, something might trigger them, or somebody might say a stray thing that happened to be part of his hypnotic programming. You would definitely not want that guy to
Well,
be
he could,
firing
yeah,
actual bullets,
he could
especially
easily end
right.
up shooting the actual assassins or something. Um,
Exactly, because the actual
so
assassin was very close to Kennedy. So if Sirhan's firing in that direction with real bullets, he could kill the real assassin before he gets the job done. So that wouldn't make
right,
sense
right.
either.
So,
Yeah.
so to talk about hypnosis in a broader sense,
Yeah.
part of the reason that before I'd read your book, I thought that was not a good explanation for what had happened to him was because I'm the son of a psychoanalyst, and he's
Uh-huh.
never, I don't think he's ever done hypnosis, but he learned about it and knew a lot about it. And one of the things that he had told me about, and that he was educated in medical school about, is yes, you can get a lot from hypnosis, but you cannot get anyone to do something they wouldn't want to do when they're conscious, when they're outside of a hypnotic state. And you go through several examples in the literature and in
Mhm.
history of the opposite, of people that have done things that is very much out of their nature. You go through at least 2, maybe 3 cases of someone actually murdering someone while in a hypnotic state.
Yeah.
And you extensively go through the fact that they might not be willing to just, you can't just say go murder your mother and they'll do it, but you can put enough suggestions in there that their mother's not their mother or some other trick to make them commit the act.
Right. And that's really the key is, yeah, you can't make somebody do something they wouldn't normally do, but you can change their reality and make them see things that aren't there, and and believe things that aren't true. And I had a personal experience of that, which I've talked about before. I'll just keep it short, but I was at a hypnosis show, and the woman I went there early, and I ended up sitting next to somebody who went on stage. So I got to see her for 20 minutes before she was hypnotized. Perfectly nice, normal, next door neighbor type, chatty. We had a nice conversation. And then she volunteered to go up on stage. And she was hypnotized, and the hypnotist handed her some play money and said it was a big check that she'd won. And she got all excited and jumped around, and as you would expect. And that was it. And I was hoping I would see her after the show, but I really wanted to catch the hypnotist. And I ran over to him and started talking about the Sirhan case, and he got visibly nervous. When he was a young guy, couldn't have been involved, but the fact that he knew exactly what I was about to ask and didn't want to answer it, and literally like picked up his stuff and almost ran out of the area, I thought was really interesting. But anyway, so the hypnotist has left the area. The crowds are clearing, and I'm looking around, see if I see anybody from the stage. And there's that woman that I had talked to, and she looked very distressed. So I went up to her, and It's like, hey, what's wrong? And she's like, well, I have to give this back. And I'm like, what's play money? I don't think he cares. And she goes, no, it's a $25,000 check. And I kind of freaked out because she was literally seeing something that wasn't there. She was
Yeah.
still hypnotized, and there was no sign of it. There was no sleepy, drowsy. We all have this image of, oh, you're getting sleepy from the cartoons of our youth
Right.
and stuff. It doesn't work like that, and people can be very normal in other aspects. But she was very distressed, and I tried to like get her to see what was really there. I could not shake her of it. And I worried that if I tried any harder, she might do something violent to keep that check. Like if I tried to rip it up or something, I don't know what she would have done.
Yeah.
She wanted to give that back. And so anyway,
I,
it's
I,
it's super powerful.
yeah. And I had my own experience with this when I was a young comedian just starting out. I was doing the MC job of a comedy show, and the hypnotist was a headliner. And my parents are in the audience because this is one of my earlier stand-up gigs that I ever did. And to my horror, my mom volunteers to be one of the people on the stage to be hypnotized.
Oh,
Now,
wow.
it was so clear during the show for, I think, anyone who knew my mom, that she was not hypnotized. She was just playing
Fake it.
along, and she's smiling, and kind of, while a couple of the other people look like they're in trance state, she's looking around, and so it was just evident she was having a good time. Now, that's some of the people in those shows. They just think, oh, it's
Yeah.
funny, I'll do it. But on that same show was the bouncer of the club had volunteered. The bouncer of this club, which I worked at many times, was a very not bright 25-year-old who was 6'4" or something. Very tough guy, prided himself in being tough, but not a bright guy. Dumb as rocks. And he goes up there, and the guy hypnotizes him, seems very legitimate. He seems very out of it. And then has him go through the act of he thinks he's pregnant and he's going to give birth. And this guy is dead serious about this. There is no smiling. And he gives birth to the baby. And I think it gives him maybe a stuffed animal to hold, and he thinks it's a baby. And this big, dumb animal who very much pride himself on being a tough guy is just like in tears over the baby he's holding. And
Wow.
it was just very evident that no matter how much this guy might have wanted to play along, there was no way he was going to play along with being a woman and giving birth if he weren't legitimately hypnotized. And so it is a very legitimate thing. But as you mentioned in your book, there's about 20% of the population that can be deeply hypnotized.
Right. They can be that hypnotized. Yeah. And 20% can't be hypnotized at all. They're just, and it's funny because you would think like the more intelligent you are, the less susceptible you are. And it's often the reverse. The more intelligent you are, the more susceptible you are to subtle hypnosis because you think you're smart enough to see it coming. And you can't. If somebody's really good at what they do, you won't see it coming. And in fact, we're all hypnotized daily by the media and by the advertisers. They spend a ton of money figuring out which colors will trigger you to buy something. What price point? Why does everything priced at 0.99? Because psychologically, that feels better than 0.00, even though it's only a penny different. But people feel they're getting a deal. It's under $17, it's $16.99. So we're all
manipulation.
And of course, we could go on and on about the mainstream media and the way they program us daily, but not to distract too much. But let's talk about the case that I thought that was stunning was one from like 1923 back in Srebrenica, Yugoslavia or Serbia. I forget which it was at that time, but it was a cop who volunteered to go on stage for a hypnosis act. And the hypnosis brought up this cop and, gave him a block of wood and said, I want you to shoot up the audience with it. And he's like, boom, 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 boom. And of course, nothing happened because it was a block of wood. And the cop felt like he hadn't fulfilled his command, the hypnotic command. And he was getting more and more frustrated because he wasn't able to get any bullets out of this block of wood. So he pulled out his real gun and fired into the audience. He killed 3 people. You can look this up. This really happened.
Right.
And it took them hours to kind of get the cop back out of hypnosis to the point where he understood what he had done. And he literally went mad, and they ended up having to put him in a insane asylum because his whole life had been about protecting people. And
Right.
now through this stupid little, hypnosis act, he was responsible for the murder of 3 people. He was horrified.
And I
And
think part of the reason that this is covered up in general, I don't mean in RFK's case, but I mean in general about hypnosis is one, it goes against what we believe is our of ourselves, that we are all capable of having our own thoughts and nobody could tell me what to do. And so
right,
it's upsetting to believe that this ability exists out there to do this
mhm,
to people.
scary.
And another is that many hypnotists themselves, or those who are trained in it, there's many psychological
Mhm,
professionals that might have been trained in it who are not necessarily hypnotists.
mhm.
They don't want the truth out there either, because it would suddenly turn this into almost a deadly weapon or a weapon for sexual assault and those kind of things. And so they don't want this kind of really widely talked about, that anything can be done with hypnosis, at least on a certain percentage of the population.
And worse, a lot of the well, not I wouldn't say a lot of them, but some of the hypnotists themselves have been charged with sexual assault. And
Right.
one woman managed to tape, her session because she suspected something was happening, but she couldn't prove it because she had no memory because she was hypnotized each time. And so she finally took in a tape and figured out what was happening and sued him. And there are numerous cases of that. Again, if you just go to newspapers and you Google hypnosis, you'll be shocked how many lawsuits, are related to that. And in the CIA's own documentation, which you can go to CIA.gov and search their reading room for hypnosis, and you'll see they all kinds of interesting conversations and documents going way back to the 40s and 50s, where they were
This is what I
literally
wanted to get. This is what I wanted to
yeah,
get to next. Is something that's completely undeniable, no matter how much you may want to argue against this. Is the CIA has had mind control programs, extensive mind control programs, and a portion of that was working on hypnosis.
yes, and a large portion of that was trying to find a way to get people to do things they wouldn't normally do. Because if you can get, somebody under hypnosis to commit assassination, for example, how great would that be for the agency? Because they couldn't remember, they wouldn't understand what had happened to them. They become, yeah, just incredible weapons. Now they call them super agents, super spies. That was their goal, to prepare somebody through hypnosis to do incredible feats. The other thing is you can be stronger under hypnosis than you are normally. And so again, it's like you could be programmed not to feel pain even if you're shot.
Right.
There was a story I wrote about in an article, I don't think it's in my book, but of an assassin who kept firing at an event even after he had been shot. And the hypnotist who was writing about it said that's clear evidence of hypnosis because no normal person could
Right.
withstand that pain and keep going. But a super spy in that sense
Well,
could.
and this is so to bring it back to Sirhan, this is one of the things that eyewitnesses also said is that when they tackled him with a gun, he had super strength. Right.
Yeah, he's 5'4". He's a small guy. He was hoping to be a jockey. I mean, think of how small those jockey characters are. And he was light. I mean, he wasn't like big and bulky or anything. And yet he held off Rosie Greer trying to get the gun from his hand. He was able to keep it from Rosie Greer, a big football tackle for a long point.
Former NFL. Yeah.
Yeah, there were like 6 people on him trying to get him to give up the gun. I mean, they almost killed him. They almost choked him to death, and they almost broke his hand, and, somehow his ankle did get twisted and sprained in the thing. But it took them a long time to literally pry the gun from his hand because he had, and one of them even said that he had almost a superhuman strength. So that's more evidence of hypnosis. But what's interesting is there was a hypnotist brought in many years later because if somebody is under hypnosis, then sometimes you can retrieve the memory through hypnosis of what was happened in the original hypnosis session. And so Dan Brown was brought in by Bill Pepper when he was representing Sirhan. He was given access to him over, for 60 hours over a couple of years. And he would go in and talk to him and very gently try and get Sirhan to remember and, would put a mother and take him back to the pantry. And interestingly, it was very hard for Sirhan to remember anything in the pantry, but he eventually, under Dan Brown, got to remember this much. He remembered seeing a girl in a polka dot dress who was to him, very sexy, and following her around like a puppy dog, hoping to get lucky. And at one point, she took him into the backstage area right behind where Kennedy was speaking. That's where the coffee urn was. It took me a long time to figure out where was the coffee urn, because that was the last thing he remembered, was pouring this girl a cup of coffee.
Oh.
And so I was like, where was the urn? Well, it was literally right behind the stage while Kennedy was speaking. And after that, Sirhan had no memory until the hypnosis. So then he remembered seeing a big man with a full face who pointed them to the pantry. I later found out that the big man with the full face was wearing a polka dot tie, as if the polka dot symbol was itself a trigger.
A trigger, yeah.
Yeah, Darren Brown, who's a hypnotist and a mentalist who had an amazing show in the UK, is called The Experiments, and you can find some of these shows online, and I encourage people to watch them. But he based one on this case, on the Robert Kennedy assassination, and he used the polka dot pattern as the first level. Because, and I've read this in other literature, that often when you do hypnosis, it's a two-stage process. And if anybody saw the film The Manchurian Candidate, you understand that too. The first clue was, why don't you pass the time by playing by playing solitaire? And then when he gets to the Queen of Diamonds, he's in that state of readiness. And the next command the guy tells him is what he does. And at one point he gets to that card where he says, why don't you go jump in a lake? And he literally goes and jumps in a lake. And people think that's fiction. And it's like, no, that's actually, that was written by people who had direct knowledge of the CIA's mind control programs.
Well, and in this show, you just referenced The Experiments. They set up something where an audience member is hypnotized into shooting Stephen Fry, and that's it.
So the polka dot was the pattern that brought him into his state of readiness. And a girl in a polka dot dress approaches him in the audience as he's watching Stephen Fry after 2 months of conditioning. And, he's handed a gun before the show and said, will you just hold this? It is a loaded gun. Be super careful with it. I don't want anything to happen to it, but I trust you. And I'm going to, have you deliver it to somebody after the show. So, the kid in his hypnotic state takes the gun in. And then this girl comes in with the polka dot dress, and that's his trigger. And then she whispers to him, the target is Stephen Fry. And the hypnotist had him touch his forehead, which was something just for the visual, so the audience could know, command received. So you see him touch his forehead. He gets out the gun, he stands up, and he literally fires at Stephen Fry, who's been wired with squibs, and falls down dead. And the kid in hypnosis has no reaction, which is like Sirhan. Right. He's perfectly calm because he's in an altered state. And and so they show him the video later, of course, and the kid's a little surprised, I really did that. Yeah.
So in these last few minutes, to put it all together, it seems highly likely that Sirhan is this kind of lost young man who's easily manipulatable. The CIA maybe starts kind of working with him, obviously not saying they're CIA. They find out he's
but likely,
but maybe they find out he's very hypnotizable. They then set him up on a path to basically pull a gun of blanks out in front of RFK when the actual assassins start firing, so that everyone's attention goes directly to him, which creates a great distraction, but it also gives you the perfect patsy.
Exactly, because he doesn't remember being set up or programmed in any way. And when Dan Brown was talking to him at the moment of the shooting, all Sirhan remembers is that girl in the polka dot dress pinched him a certain way. And then he's like, and suddenly I was back at the firing range. And I thought I was shooting at targets. And then all of a sudden I feel like I'm being choked. Even under hypnosis, he doesn't remember ever seeing Robert Kennedy. That is not in his field of vision. It's he's been programmed to see a target because he's a nice guy. And when his lawyers asked him, what did you think the first time you saw Robert Kennedy? He said, I thought he was a saint. It's that's the sad thing, is politically it would have been his hero, and yet through this hypnosis, he's just manipulated into being a patsy in the plot. And one quick note on that, there was a Korean plot to kill the half brother of Kim Jong-un. and 2 women were brought in to do this, and they thought they were participating in TV stuff. They didn't even need hypnosis. They were kind of groomed and trained to do weird things on command at the airport, and each time they'd get $100, and so they were happy to keep doing it. And one time it was like, spray this guy with water and towel him off. Well, the girl wasn't told that the towel had nerve agent on it, and the guy was dead like within a few hours. And how guilty are they? They were literally tricked into assassinating this guy. And that's my argument with Sirhan. He was tricked into assassinating Kennedy. He didn't go there with the motive to kill Kennedy. And there's writings in his journal that say Kennedy must die, which, first of all, the police couldn't really match to Sirhan's handwriting. So I don't even know if he did write that or if somebody was setting him up. And
But if he did,
interestingly,
it's an easy thing to do with hypnosis, right?
yeah, what's interesting though is in there's the date May 25th, and on that date there was a report out of Israel that Robert Kennedy had been shot at a rally, and he hadn't been. It was a complete false report. But it's as if maybe there was a plot that day that didn't come off, and Sirhan was being framed for that. And then whatever reason didn't happen, but no one told the Israelis, and they reported it dutifully that it had come off. So I thought that was super interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we got to a lot in this brief half hour. It is obviously a dense subject. I highly recommend everybody. Let's see, where is it? Everybody check out your book, A Lie Too Big to Fail. Great work on this, Lisa, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
You too, Lee. Thank you so much.
Thank you again.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right, folks. Hope you enjoyed that. Obviously, an important topic, about the assassination of RFK, which was kind of the last open end to the assassination of JFK. If you assassinate JFK, like the CIA did, then you have his brother coming to power, who is clearly going to get to the actual bottom of the investigation and go after the CIA. Well, you got to take him out too, and many other people, as they did as well. Mary Meyer, if you haven't read Mary's Mosaic, excellent book. I interviewed the author of that as well. Mary Meyer was JFK's mistress, who everyone knew. It was pretty open secret, but they felt she needed to be assassinated a year after JFK was killed, because she was talking too much about the CIA being involved. And just an important topic. And check out that book if you get a chance. And thanks again. Click share, click subscribe, click thumbs up, and keep fighting.